India, a land of diverse cultures and rich history, was under British rule for nearly 2 centuries. The British East India Company, established in the 17th century, gradually expanded its control over India. By the 19th century, the British government directly ruled most of the Indian subcontinent. India, with its vast resources and strategic location, became known as the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. The British Raj, as it was called, brought about significant changes in India. It introduced Western education, modernized infrastructure, and established a centralized administrative system. However, British rule was also marked by economic exploitation, political subjugation, and social discrimination. Indians were treated as second-class citizens in their own land, fueling resentment and a growing desire for self-rule. The Indian independence movement gained momentum in the early 20th century. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi emerged, advocating for non-violent resistance against British rule. The demand for freedom resonated across the subcontinent, uniting people from different religions, languages, and backgrounds. As the Indian independence movement gained strength, so did the idea of partitioning the country along religious lines. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, demanded a separate Muslim state, arguing that Muslims and Hindus were 2 distinct nations with different cultures, customs, and aspirations. The Muslim League's demand for Pakistan, a land of the pure, gained traction among some Muslims who feared marginalization in a Hindu-majority independent India. The partition, however, was opposed by Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian National Congress, who believed in a united and secular India where Hindus and Muslims could coexist peacefully. Despite efforts to find a compromise, the communal tensions between Hindus and Muslims escalated in the 1940s. The partition of India seemed increasingly inevitable, casting a dark shadow over the impending independence. The Indian National Congress, established in 1885, was initially a secular organization fighting for greater autonomy within the British Empire. It was founded by a group of educated Indians, including Alan Octavian Hume, Dadabhai Naoroji, and Dinshaw Wacha, who sought to create a platform for civil and political dialogue. The Congress aimed to bring together Indians from various regions and communities to voice their grievances and aspirations to the British authorities. However, with the rise of the Muslim League in 1906, the political landscape of India began to shift. The All India Muslim League was established in Dhaka with the primary goal of representing the interests of the Muslim population in India. The League was founded by prominent Muslim leaders like Nawab Salimullah, Aga Khan III, and Nawab Mohsin ul Mulk, who felt that the Congress did not adequately address the concerns of Muslims. The Muslim League, under Jinnah's leadership, increasingly advocated for Muslim interests, demanding separate electorates and safeguards for Muslims within any future independent Indian government. Jinnah, who initially was a member of the Congress, became disillusioned with its policies and joined the League, eventually becoming its most prominent leader. He argued that Muslims were a distinct nation with their own cultural and religious identity, which needed to be protected in a predominantly Hindu India. The Congress, while advocating for a united India, struggled to alleviate the concerns of the Muslim League. Leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Sardar Patel emphasized the importance of unity and secularism, but their efforts to bridge the gap between the 2 communities often fell short. The Congress's vision of a unified India was based on the principles of democracy, secularism, and social justice, which they believed would ensure equal rights for all citizens, regardless of their religion. The 2 parties differed on the nature of the future Indian state, with the Congress envisioning a secular democracy and the League demanding a separate Muslim state. The Congress leaders believed that a united India would be stronger and more capable of achieving economic and social progress. In contrast, the Muslim League leaders feared that Muslims would be marginalized in a Hindu-majority India and insisted on the creation of a separate state, which eventually came to be known as Pakistan. This divide deepened in the 1940s, culminating in the call for the partition of India. The demand for Pakistan gained momentum, especially after the Lahore Resolution of 1940, which called for the creation of independent states for Muslims in the northwestern and eastern zones of India. The growing communal tensions and the failure of various attempts at reconciliation, such as the Cripps mission and the Cabinet Mission Plan, further exacerbated the situation. The partition was a culmination of complex historical factors, including British policies of divide and rule, the rise of religious nationalism, and the inability of the Congress and the League to find common ground. The British colonial administration often played one community against the other to maintain control, which sowed seeds of mistrust and division. The rise of religious nationalism, fueled by leaders on both sides, made it increasingly difficult to envision a united India. The seeds of division sown during the British Raj eventually led to the tragic partition of the subcontinent. The partition in 1947 resulted in the creation of two independent nations, India and Pakistan, and led to one of the largest mass migrations in history. Millions of people were displaced, and communal violence claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. The legacy of partition continues to shape the political and social landscape of the region to this day. Independence at a cost. The Mountbatten Plan and the Radcliffe Line. In 1947, as the British prepared to leave India, Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, was tasked with overseeing the transition of power. This was a monumental task, as the subcontinent was a mosaic of diverse cultures, languages, and religions. The British had ruled India for nearly 2 centuries, and their departure left a power vacuum that needed careful handling. Faced with the daunting task of dividing a nation riven by religious tensions, Mountbatten, in consultation with the Congress and the Muslim League, announced the partition plan. The political landscape was fraught with tension, as leaders like Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah debated the future of the subcontinent. The urgency to find a solution was palpable, as communal violence was already erupting in various parts of the country. The plan, known as the Mountbatten Plan, proposed the creation of 2 independent dominions, India and Pakistan. This decision was seen as a way to address the demands of the Muslim League, which sought a separate nation for Muslims, and the Indian National Congress, which wanted a united but independent India. The former British Indian provinces, with a Muslim majority, including Punjab and Bengal, were to be divided between the 2 new nations. This division was not just a matter of drawing lines on a map. It involved complex negotiations and immense pressure to ensure that the division was as fair as possible, given the circumstances. The Radcliffe Line, named after Sir Cyril Radcliffe, was hastily drawn to demarcate the boundaries between India and Pakistan. Radcliffe, a British lawyer with no prior experience in India, was given just 5 weeks to decide the fate of millions. His task was to draw a line that would separate the Hindu-majority areas from the Muslim-majority areas, a task that was fraught with challenges and complexities. The partition, while granting independence to India and Pakistan, came at a heavy price. The joy of independence was overshadowed by the sorrow of division. Celebrations were marred by the reality of a divided land, where neighbours turned into strangers overnight. The hastily drawn Radcliffe Line divided communities, separated families, and triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history. People were forced to leave their homes, their belongings, and their memories behind, embarking on a perilous journey to what was now a foreign land. Millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs found themselves on the wrong side of the newly created borders, leading to widespread violence and displacement. The partition led to communal riots, with atrocities committed on both sides. The human cost was staggering, with estimates of up to 2 million people losing their lives and over 14 million being displaced. The legacy of the partition continues to affect the subcontinent, shaping the political and social landscape of both India and Pakistan to this day. Leading the way. Key figures of the partition. The partition of India in 1947 was not just a political event, but a human tragedy that affected millions of lives. It was a momentous occasion that saw the birth of 2 nations, India and Pakistan, and was marked by widespread communal violence, mass migrations, and deep-seated trauma. The partition of India was a defining moment in the lives of millions. Families were torn apart, homes were abandoned, and a sense of uncertainty loomed large. The trains that once symbolized connectivity now became harbingers of death and despair, carrying refugees across newly drawn borders. Leading figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah played pivotal roles in this historical event. Their visions, decisions, and actions significantly influenced the course of history, shaping the destinies of millions. Gandhi, the staunch advocate of non-violence in a united India, was deeply saddened by the partition and the violence it unleashed. He believed in the power of love and non-violence to bring about social change, and was heartbroken to see his dream of a united India shattered. He tirelessly worked to quell the communal riots that erupted across the country, appealing for peace and harmony between Hindus and Muslims. Gandhi's efforts to foster unity and understanding were relentless, as he traveled to the most affected areas, meeting with leaders from both communities and urging them to embrace peace. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, shouldered the responsibility of leading a newly independent nation grappling with the aftermath of partition. Nehru's vision for India was one of progress and modernity, where secularism and democracy would be the cornerstones of the new nation. He envisioned a modern, secular and democratic India, striving to rebuild a nation torn apart by division. Nehru's efforts were focused on nation-building, industrialization and education, as he sought to lay the foundations for a strong and united India. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the leader of the Muslim League, achieved his goal of creating Pakistan a separate homeland for Muslims. Jinnah's vision was to create a nation where Muslims could live freely and practice their religion without fear of persecution. He became the first Governor-General of Pakistan, urging his people to build a nation based on Islamic principles. Jinnah's leadership was instrumental in the early years of Pakistan, as he worked to establish a new government and set the direction for the country's future. The partition of India was a complex event shaped by the visions and actions of these leaders, each leaving an indelible mark on the course of history. Their legacies continue to influence the subcontinent as the nations of India and Pakistan navigate their paths forward, forever linked by their shared history and the enduring impact of partition.